So, two mystics walked into a bar. That's our title for the moment. Peter Bolland and I are your hosts for this. Is it a podcast? Is it a chat? I don't know. Hello, Peter. Spiritual gangster. I love it.
Hello, Maggie. So good to be with you from the other side of the world. Spiritual gangster, yeah. I don't know. It sounds a little aggressive, doesn't it?
I love it.
But I still like it. Yeah.
But it's actually about being a spiritual warrior, really, isn't it? We have to have the armory, even if we don't use it. I love the legend of Athena, who has a sword, but she never pulls it. But she's
Hmm.
got the sword. If she pulls out the sword, she's failed, but she's got it, which gives her the confidence and the strength and warns everybody else not to mess with her. So that's how I
And
see your hat.
fine, I'll take it. And it's that weaponry as deterrence.
Mm.
You pray that it's never used, but by its very presence, the dynamics shift a little bit.
Yeah.
And
You
and
put your
I
boundaries clear.
Yeah, and I think that's reasonable. Yeah,
Think it's very, very important. As
yeah,
somebody who's had a lymphatic cancer, which is all about protection of the body,
mm,
the part of your body that's meant to protect you doesn't protect you, is going to tell you that your boundaries are bad.
yeah, yeah.
But
We're
that's
we're
a whole
reading.
other topic. We thought today we might talk about faith.
Yes,
How did you
yes, and
find your faith? Well, what is your faith? What do you believe? And how, and a
well,
reasonably short, as in less than 9 hours, version of your journey of how you got there.
well, you asked the wrong guy. You can't hold me back, Maggie.
I'm
No, yeah,
sitting here with a cup of tea. Go ahead. I'm very happy.
yeah. Um, you know, you're talking to a philosophy guy here, so my first problem is I need to understand these words better. What are the definitions of the words I am about to use? What does faith mean? And in the questions you just asked, faith means what is your spiritual practice, your religious ideology, perhaps even how might you identify by label Christian, Buddhist, etc. And all of those are absolutely accurate. But I go back a little further and I think, the one of the challenges I have with faith is that I my mind goes in a lot of different directions. You and I have spoken about this before. I didn't grow up in a religious family. My mom and dad came from the Netherlands. I was born here. They were spiritual people. My dad had books by Swedenborg and Krishnamurti on the shelf, but he never talked about it to me. But I felt like something weird was going on here. But he was very kind of close to the vest. And in retrospect, now, years after he's been gone, I think he was just kind of a private mystic and never imposed any of that on me or any kind of religious instruction. Mom, too. And I never went to church at all as a kid. And when I got to college, I fell in love with it being religious studies and philosophy. And then I started getting interested in it. And I don't know. I think what kept me out of religion was that a lot of religious folks were telling me you just have to have faith. And so faith was often explained to me as, look, when you have uncertainty about a claim that a religion is making, like Jesus was born of a virgin or walked on water or died and resurrected again. And a lot of people have like serious questions. Is that metaphorical or are you like literally saying that? And when people ask those questions, some religious folks reply with, you just have to believe. You just have to have faith. And I didn't care for that much as a sort of scientifically oriented, skeptical guy. I thought that faith meant believing in things for which there was no evidence,
Mhm.
believing in things because these authorities or this group of people was telling me to believe it in
Mhm.
order to gain entrance to their group, and I wasn't having it. It just wasn't good enough for me. And then as I got deeper into religious studies, I started realizing faith, the way Paul uses it in the New Testament, does not just or even at all mean believing in things for which there's no evidence. It means things like be okay with paradox, be okay with uncertainty, don't feel like you have to rush in with answers, live with questions. And I tell you what, I am all for that. And that was my entry into Christianity. I started in Buddhism and all the Eastern traditions. I fell in love with mysticism through those lenses. But when I started reading Julian of Norwich or Saint Teresa of Avila and Saint John of the Cross and Meister Eckhart and all these folks up to Thomas Merton, um, it is through the contemplative practices of Christianity that I began to realize the universality of direct experience, which is another definition of faith.
Mm. That's wonderful. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to blow my background now because I saw that you'd done it, and I thought that's a lovely thing to do.
I
So.
don't know how to undo it. I'm sorry. It's not intentional. I have a blurry background.
I have now purposely had a brotherly background. I think paradox is key here. One of the things about
Mm,
the prophets, which we were talking about last time, is that they would hold the center point in the paradox. It's this and it's this. And
yeah,
I love Richard Rohr's definition, which is faith is the opposite of certainty.
right,
And when you get religious folks who are certain, they don't have faith. They've got
yeah,
a tribe. Because,
right,
yes, everything to do with whatever we might call the God or the Holy One, I would say, is unprovable. That's the whole point of it. When people sort of say, oh, show me something that's real and I'll believe it, the answer is always, will you believe it? And it may show itself as being real. And my journey was very orthodox, brought up Church of England, um, a little like St. Augustine, God grant me chastity, constancy, and patience, but not yet. And I really didn't think about it much. I did say the Lord's Prayer and I asked for help occasionally. And with the family, I went to church on Sundays and I had a kind of a faith. But my turning point was I'm one of these odd people who doesn't have qualifications. I learn things, but I always learn outside the system, which I find very useful, but annoys people intensely because they will say, "Well, what are your qualifications for this?" And I'll just say,
mhm,
"Practice." And they'll,
yeah,
but it's a bit like faith because I get led to where I want to be
right,
or where I need to be, not where I want to be. But my changing point was when my first husband died from
mm,
cancer. He was an atheist. I was young enough not to worry about that. Okay, I had a faith. He didn't. What was the problem? We were fantastically in love with each other. And a year after our wedding, he died. And the hospital chaplain told me that he was going to hell
yeah,
because he wasn't a Christian. And actually, that guy
mhm.
was an angel. It was horrible at the time, but it just made me go, what? I was a trollop. He was definitely a better man than I by any Christian standards of judgment. But
Sure.
I'm going to heaven because I've signed on the right dotted line and he isn't because he hasn't. And that was my wake up call, Peter. And that's led to 35 years of not knowing and going to say, what the heck is going on here? What is this about? What did Jesus say? What is Judaism all about? What is Christianity all about? What is all this stuff about healing? What's all this stuff about forgiveness? Why are people so certain that they can condemn another human being? So that's why I started this journey. And I mean, now it sounds ridiculous. I'm incredibly grateful to Henry for dying. It was a
Mm,
huge gift. I
mhm,
gave him the gift of love in the last year of his life, and he gave me the gift of shattering my religious belief.
yeah. And that minister as well is a strange threshold guardian too, with that
They don't
ridiculous.
do that now. I've worked as a hospice chaplain, and you do not do that now. But
I
I'm so
suspect
glad
so.
he did. I
Yeah.
really am.
I was baptized as a Christian about 4 years ago in the Episcopalian Church here in San Diego, St. Paul's Cathedral. And how that happened is still difficult to explain. I think it began with the Church of England, oddly enough, and being in St. Paul's in London and in all the glorious cathedrals in the UK, including the one that Henry VIII, all those ruined cathedrals,
The Abbey.
Tintern Abbey, and so
Mm.
on, from the time of King Henry VIII and the destruction of the monasteries and then over in Paris in Notre Dame de
Mm,
Paris, and these magnificent medieval churches, which I had taught my humanities students about in my Introduction to Humanities courses here in San
mm,
Diego. And oh, here's the transition from Romanesque architecture to Gothic and Bishop Suger, and look at the stained glass and the flying buttresses and the Neoplatonism of the symbolism of the light. And I was there for all of it, but as a kind of aren't these people interesting kind of a, from the outside. But when Lori and I were in Paris, I think 2018, before the fire at Notre Dame
mm.
de Paris, and we were with a Colette tour group, and there's nothing fancy. We were being led through Notre Dame like cattle with all the other tour groups. And but I tell you, you're looking up at that stained glass, and there was a men's boys choir from the UK there singing, rehearsing for a performance later, and they were doing Samuel Barber's Adagio for strings, it's called, but the vocal arrangement. Uh, just one of the most beautiful, mournful pieces of music. And I mean, I looked around and everybody was weeping. And it was such a profound depth of experience. I was tingling and electrified. And if I had to pick one moment, that was a really big one. But you know what it really was, which was years of little glimmers like that along the way.
Mm,
I could tell 100 different stories like that that began to soften my kind of recalcitrance
mm,
of I'm going to look at Christianity from the outside in, and being willing to crawl up inside and take a look from there. And the key was what you shared a moment ago. I began to understand faith not as certainty, but as doubt. And
mm.
that's just a strange thing to acknowledge. But when you read Thomas Merton and
Yeah,
our friend Richard Rohr and his amazing work, and all the other folks at CAC, Center for Action and Contemplation, his center in Albuquerque, and all of these progressive Christians, all of these ex-evangelicals, Rachel Held Evans,
yeah,
Brian McLaren, they came from the other side of the extreme. They came from the Bible Belt
yeah.
evangelical fundamentalist Christianity, and I came from outside of Christianity, and we kind of got together there in the middle. And I'm as stunned as anybody else. But I don't wear a cross around my neck, but I have a little necklace that is hard to see, but it's a descending dove,
Oh, yes, I see it. The Holy
and so
Spirit.
that's
Yeah,
a classic Holy Spirit symbol,
yeah.
and that's as far as I've gone so far. I haven't put a cross around my neck yet, but
I
but
do wear
I'm
a
there.
cross. I do wear
Yeah.
a cross, but I only
Well, I
have worn it
noticed your
the last
collar as well.
few years. When my
Yeah.
husband bought it for me for Christmas, I think I can't wear a cross that big, but actually, it's so pretty. So
If Madonna if rock stars can wear crosses, why can't I?
yeah, I once went into a jeweler in England, and I wanted a chain because I had just a necklace which wanted a chain. And there was a
Yeah.
girl in there who said, "Oh, I want one of those chains with the little man hanging off the cross." And she just didn't know who it was. It was just the little man hanging off the cross.
Yes.
And then the guy said to me,
Some guy.
I've got the chain you want, but it's got a cross on it." And I remember the Knights Templar who had to stamp on a cross. Do you remember? There's a legend that
No.
they had to show that they loved the faith, not the symbols of the faith.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
So I said to the jeweler, cut the cross off. And there were three other people in the jewelers at that point, and they all went,
I want to put a Star of David on it or something. Yeah.
yeah, but that's so interesting because that's back to the certainty. You cannot
Yeah.
defile a cross. Well, it's not about defiling it, it's what you put onto it. And I'm quite sure that if Jesus had been standing there in the shop with me, he would have said, "I'm not too keen on those things anyway. No, they remind me of a
Yeah.
bad time in my life."
Well, as you know, the Episcopalian Church in the U.S. is just the Anglican Church post-American Revolution.
Yeah.
The priests could no longer swear fealty to the king, and so they became this other thing. But in every other way, it's the Church of England. However, in the ensuing 250 years, there's been a little bit of a just some doctrines have moved around. But the reason I gravitated to the Episcopalian sect or denomination is I loved all that. I love that 15th century music, the very kind of neo-Catholic
Mm.
ritual and liturgy, and the incense and the stained glass and the stone and the old the old feel, the tradition of it, the centuries long rituals, and I felt most at home there. It's hard to say why. But secondly, the progressive spiritual doctrines and the progressive social justice ideas that I needed for me to get through the door. And and they're also very welcoming. And this all goes back to Elizabeth I and the formation of the Church of England, the idea that um, a place for Protestants and Catholics to meet. And as she put it, something like we don't peer through windows into men's souls. Like you're allowed to think what you want, believe what you want.
Yeah.
And when I asked my priest all kinds of questions in the early days about what's the Episcopalian position on this and that and the other, she said, we're just people who like to pray together.
I love
And,
it. Yeah.
and I kind of like that. It's like, okay, because there's a lot of folks in the Episcopalian Church like me who come from outside of Christianity, but I think most people there are
Yeah.
former Catholics, former evangelicals, a lot of room for LGBTQ folks who are fairly formal in their Christian observance, but they were excluded from those other communities.
Yeah.
So it's a bunch of pilgrims and misfits, and maybe other churches are like that too. And I'm gradually learning they are. Our Methodist neighbors, our
Yeah.
Presbyterian neighbors, a lot of Lutherans are kind of like this. So you spend time with something, it opens up and you learn about nuances that from the outside I was utterly blind to.
Yeah, it is very different inside the box. I live on the edge of the box because I'm ordained, but I'm not ordained Episcopalian or Church of England. I'm actually ordained Catholic. I'm one of those strange, not Roman Catholic, but I was ordained by a Roman Catholic bishop who technically both of us are excommunicated from the moment that act happened
Yeah.
because Pope Benedict at the Council of the Doctrine for Faith in 2007 said any woman ordained uh, as a minister is immediately excommunicated, and any bishop who ordains her is also excommunicated. Now
How do you
that's
maintain your calm regarding those institutions? Are you resentful?
no,
Yeah.
because all change comes from the grassroots.
Yes.
All real change. There's no point in going around going, Pope Leo, ordain women, which is what a lot of women and a lot of men are doing. He can't because
Right.
of the weight of the tradition.
Yeah.
It's too big a turn. It's like a gigantic cruise ship that takes 20 miles an hour to change 20 miles to change direction.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
women are here. And one of my, not really campaigns, but I keep saying we've got to start teaching the Gospels as women. The liturgy's
Right.
got to change. We
Yes.
have to rewrite. And this is one reasons I love Kabbalah because the Zohar says so clearly you must update. If you're
Right.
not relevant to your time, you haven't got faith. You're just
Yeah.
a historian. And most of the people who just tie themselves to the law are historians. They're doing it as it
Yeah.
was, as it worked in the Victorian era or something like that. It's 9 times out of 10, you're singing a Victorian hymn.
Yeah. Yeah. That fluidity that the ancient Hebrews experienced in their own wandering, in their own political chaos,
Mm.
in their own extremely challenging lives living in the desert and on the edge of survival and in conflict with 8 different other neighbors. And that kind of uncertainty seems to be expressed in so much Hebrew scripture.
Mm.
And yet, a lot of fundamentalists today want to hammer it into chiseled
Yeah. Have you seen the
icons.
picture? There's a picture on the internet of a guy who's got, I think it's Leviticus, I can't remember exactly. Leviticus 20:18, I think, is the a man shall not lie with another man. It is an
Okay.
abomination. But Leviticus 19 is that you shall not put any marks on your body. And this guy's got tattooed on his shoulder
Yeah, the first passage. Yeah. I've
without
seen that.
realizing that is also an abomination punishable by death. And you just
Oh
go,
my goodness. Oh my goodness. Yeah. The more you know, the closer you get to the truth that cannot be written. And
yeah.
that is, seems to me, I try to suggest this, invite my students to feel or begin to understand this, that, in my world religions classes, that as Joseph Campbell puts it, mythic forms, religious doctrines and the masks of God and all that. Mythic forms are not the ultimate, they're the penultimate.
Yeah.
And they're the second to the last. And that the form which comes from recognizable things in our world, here's God born as an infant. And who doesn't want to take an infant into their arms and fall in love with them? But that familiar form is being used as a kind of a portal or a stepping off point
Mm.
where the form then gets us almost all the way there. But then in Campbell's expression, from that precipice, one must leap alone
Yes.
beyond into the unification. And here all the words get quite poetic.
Yeah.
And that's where all of the forms have been leading us. And so that's why someone like Campbell, and I would count myself as well as a universalist, that all religions work
Mm.
and they're true as metaphors. And I'm excited about all of them, and I'm excited to learn about how they help people in those cultures and contexts get closer to that precipice from which we then have finally access to that unmapped, pathless land
Yeah.
of direct experience.
Yeah. When I was invited for ordination, I was spotted by this bishop. I was doing a funeral for a murder victim in London.
Mm.
Um, it was the first funeral for somebody who'd been killed that I'd done, and it was a good service. It was a beautiful story, service. A lot of people there, and up until then, I knew I had a vocation. That's why I'd started working doing funerals. I wasn't. This was before the celebrant culture which we have today. So I
Yes.
shadowed a guy who was doing non-religious funerals, and I wanted to do the mix. I don't do non-religious funerals. That's for the humanists. That's absolutely fine. Or the other celebrants. I do funerals with some spirit in. But I was doing this funeral for a man called John Taylor, and 4 days later, having been rejected for ordination by several churches, mainly because I'm not qualified, I don't have a degree,
Yeah, yeah.
and I'm also too weird because I'm a trained healer. I had Church of England turn me away because you're a New Age healer. I mean,
Yeah,
was Jesus not a healer? But
I
anyway,
know.
so 4 days after the funeral, I get a phone call from this guy who says, I was sitting in the congregation and God spoke to me. He said, you need her and she needs you.
Mm,
And I could hear him. That was what, and I was just going, okay, what's this about? And he said, I'm inviting you to ordination into the Apostolic Liberal Catholic Church. You will not be accepted by tradition. You will not be accepted by the Orthodox. You will be an edge priest for the rest of your life. You will be despised and you will be rejected. Do you want to do
oh
it?
dear. Oh dear. What a
And I
pitch.
went,
I'm
um,
in.
and he said, okay, I'm not selling it very well, am I? There are
Yeah.
advantages. I tell you what, he said, invite me up for the weekend, cook me a nice roast dinner. He was a single man, and we'll talk about it. And if you don't want to do it at the end, we'll say no more about it. So I invited him up for the weekend. And by the end of the weekend, I thought, I just have to do this.
Yeah. Wow.
I just have to do this for me and for everybody else who's on the edge. I mean, you talk to people on the edge all the time as a college lecturer, and you all the philosophy and all the world religions. And I thought, I need to be what I needed. I need to become what I needed. And
Right.
it was really strange because I thought, well, we could do the ordination quietly. And he said, oh, no, they're public. You
Yeah.
invite everybody you know. So all these people turning up, including my family, going, what the hell's going on here? And also
You know,
he made me be naked underneath the alb. He said, no metal, nothing, nothing to stop the spirit coming through. No
okay.
rings, no necklace, no metal, no bra with a I only
Yeah,
got
yeah,
one
yeah.
with an underwire at the time.
Right. Oh my
So there I
goodness.
am, so vulnerable in front of all these people that I know, not even knowing what was going to happen, And there's a moment when the anointing on my hands, anointed with oils, and he said these words, which are, those whom these hands bless remain blessed.
Hmm.
Those whom these hands do not bless remain unblessed.
That's
And I
good.
looked up at him and went, what? And he went, that's what you've taken on, which is why
Yeah.
you must bless everything and everyone constantly. And I've taken that as my life now.
That's beautiful. And that I had not the same at all, but because of the work I do and all the public lectures and the videos and stuff, people sometimes seek me out to do officiating.
Yeah,
Uh, and 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 I went online and I got one of those little I'm a minister licenses from some PO box in
yeah,
Seattle. So
yeah,
I can without and so I can in good conscience sign the California marriage license. And I've done a handful of marriages, maybe 10 over the years, for folks who didn't belong to a church. They don't know what they are. They don't know if they're humanist, but they want something kind of
they want the
they want
ritual.
an officiated ceremony.
They want the ritual, don't they? We are really
They do.
hungry for ritual.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm working from scratch. I don't have a church liturgy to go by. I look up stuff online. I put way too much time into it. I've been to weddings where a minister pulls out a book and they just change the names and they
yeah.
read the same script. I'm like,
Oh,
that's
not for
easy.
us.
Yeah. But I got to meet with the couple like twice in their house and like, what do you want? Research it. What pieces do you want to integrate? And then after doing a few of those, I got the call from some people who I did not know, but who had heard about me, and they invited me to do a funeral. And in both cases, and they were about a year apart, it was the death of a child, of a teenager or a young 20s guy
Yeah,
who died of a drug overdose. He had been in both cases, had no, in the first case, had been in recovery, doing well, and had fallen off the wagon
mm,
and got the next dose wrong,
yeah.
which happens quite a bit,
It
and
does.
died. And so I'm going into a family's home that I don't know from Adam,
Mm,
and I'm the minister guy, and I sit with them, and oh my God, it was just a really profound
yeah,
experience of deep, deep pain and also aliveness
yeah,
that I can't really explain. To be trusted that deeply with something so obviously sacred and profoundly real.
yeah,
It just changed me. And when it happened again, I was a little readier the next time. And that was a drunk driving accident. A bunch of drunk friends in a car rolled over, and
yeah,
and the same thing, family just distraught, and me having to figure out how to not fix anything, but pull everything into a kind of reverent
yeah.
presence. And I did the best I could, and I think I did okay. But you drive away from a day like that, open and humble, and just more alive. It's the
It's the
strangest
greatest
thing.
privilege in the world to take a funeral. It
Gosh,
really is. Yeah, especially the tragic ones, but
especially
also
the
the
young.
ones of even not very dramatically lived lives. They're so important because you have to get to the heart, the essence of that person.
Yeah.
And my goal always when I take a funeral is for people to say, "You knew them so well." I
Right.
never say I never had the privilege of meeting this person.
No, no,
I
no, this
will
person.
always take
No.
it to the I do know this soul. I know
Yeah.
this soul. And one of the things that I'm really stroppy about nowadays, because actually in the UK we have a different system, by the way. You can't just get yourself a certificate to marry people. The only people that marry people are Church of England vicars, Methodist ministers, or at a registry office or a registrar. And we're not even allowed to have religious talk at a registry office at all. So nowadays,
Okay.
people have to go to a registrar office to get married and then have the ceremony afterwards if they want any kind
I
of.
see. So same-sex couples would do it that way or
Except in the
get a
Methodist
Methodist.
Church. The Methodist
Sure.
Church will now marry them, which is lovely. I was going to make a point about funerals and I've gone off on a
Yeah,
tangent.
yeah. No,
Completely
please.
forgotten. Oh, yeah. I get quite stroppy nowadays because all the celebrant courses that are going have nothing to do with the soul of the dead person. And the first thing I learned after ordination was
Hmm.
how to ensure the soul is safely through.
Hmm.
So I do a sort of little follow up with a lot of celebrants to say, okay, this is how you do the work with the soul, because nowadays it's a celebration of life. But the origin of funeral was to inform the person that they were dead and they had to move on.
Okay. Sure.
Okay, you're dead. Have you moved on? If not, why not? And how can we help
Oh
you?
my goodness, right. How do you build that in? Yeah, without sounding like you're brushing them off or something.
Yeah, but there are techniques to it. But that's probably part of my ministry. Just the other day, I found a deer in the fields where I walk, which had fallen over a fence and really, really damaged one of its legs. And there
Oh,
wasn't anything that could be done for it apart from putting it out of its misery. So I had to call somebody with a hunting license to come and take that deer out. And the guy who went down to the field and did it and came back up and he said, Minister, do dear go to heaven?
oh,
And I was just so touched that he would ask me that. And I said, absolutely, they do. And there's a wonderful book that will explain it if you want to go. Michael Newton's book, Destiny of Souls, talks about how animals go back into the group soul of creature.
yeah,
So the deer would go back into the group soul of deer and possibly be born again. Then maybe they reincarnate. I don't know.
right.
But all that kind of stuff I think is just so important is to let people ask the questions and not to be afraid coming back to faith of saying, I don't know. Let's talk
Yeah,
about it. What do you think? What
that
do you
is
think a
so good.
loving God would say about
Right,
this?
right.
Yeah.
That's the only definition of the word faith that makes sense to me is
Mm.
to gather together in the question. When I stand in my Episcopalian church and recite the Nicene Creed, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
here we go again. What a bunch of fourth century
Yeah.
Romans thought about their relationship with
Yeah.
the mystery.
Yeah.
And
I
here's the
couldn't say
part.
that creed for years. I really couldn't. It was when I
Yeah,
realized that the word Catholic actually means universal.
sure,
If
sure.
you take the Roman bit off it, you've got universal faith, faith for everybody to fit who
Yeah,
you are.
right. And that it reads on the surface of it like a contract, like a lease agreement, and you are checking every box and you are signing your name that you believe that Jesus died and rose on the
Mm,
third day. And I'm sitting there reading this going, I'm a fraud because I don't believe that. I don't
mm,
believe that.
yeah,
Uh, so it was liberating to me to realize that we could recite that as homage or
yes,
homage to the deeply lived faith experiences of our ancestors as
yes,
a historical snapshot
yes,
of the fourth century or whatever
yeah,
and that it is not binding on me now, and that we gather in their memory to have our own experience of the mystery in this
absolutely.
context,
Yeah,
understanding the whole Christian project in a very different way. It isn't about impurity that must be cleansed, as the medieval church taught. It is about a transformational encounter with the real
yeah,
through the mystery of Christ and God in this tradition. and that I wasn't bound to the Nicene Creed at all. Nobody kind of like told me that for a long time,
Yeah.
and it was liberating.
It is liberating. It really is. Another of the lovely things I love about the Jewish tradition is that you walk with God. In Christianity, we have the face of Christ, the face of the Lord. Incidentally, Jesus is not called God in the New Testament, he's called Lord, which is different. God is Elohim, Lord is Yahweh. Yahweh, it's
Yeah.
there's some fairly interesting views that Yahweh is the son of Elohim, which is feminine, taking it back to the Joseph Campbell four levels of faith. But Jesus Christ is Lord. But we like that idea of being able to look into the eyes of the other, of the divine. And that's what icons are for. You look into the eyes and look through them. But that's the message of it. You're meant to look through the icon. But
Yeah.
Judaism is so much easier because God's by your side or walking behind you, and you're
Mhm.
walking with God. And that to me was a fellowship. Meant that I wasn't even separate from God.
Yeah. The the relational element is so key, and
Mm.
that's something that Christianity kind of contributes to world religions, this idea, and Judaism, of course, as kind of one continuum, this idea of having relationship, as Martin Buber put it, the I thou
Yes.
is
Yeah.
where God resides. And then, as your ordination ceremony officiant affirmed that only when you bless are you blessed, and when you withhold blessing, you withhold blessing from yourself. The circulation
Yeah.
idea,
Yeah.
and that God is not just this disembodied, first principle in the sky, Aristotle's unmoved mover or whatever,
Yeah.
but that there is a lived, alive relationship, just as between people, between us and the divine, even if you conceive of the divine as a non-local energy
Yeah.
instead of a being, a conscious being, an anthropomorphized
Yeah.
God. Whatever form you give it, there is that relational piece that was missing from my Taoist years, where,
Yes.
uh, where the Tao was like the force. It was like electricity. I don't have a relationship with electricity. I use it all the time, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And also in Kabbalah, we have our goal is to help God behold God.
There
We're all
you go.
taught that God can only experience physical reality through physical beings.
Mm,
And God can only appreciate chocolate the way I appreciate chocolate through me.
mm,
God can only appreciate what the beauty of this uh, end of year is through my eyes. Okay, you can appreciate it differently through your eyes, but Maggie's eyes and Peter's eyes are both just as valuable to God because we see different things and different aspects, and we think different things are beautiful. And that is so exciting for God to be one tendril of God, if you like, to be in us and see the world through our eyes
right.
and see the beauty of it and the joy of it and the horror of it.
Yeah.
So we are experiencing as God.
Right. Right. It's remarkable.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that's what keeps it vibrant and alive and real. It isn't some butterfly pinned to a corkboard. It isn't some resemblance of its
Yeah.
former self. It is here and now that faith finally lives, not in the tombs and the archives and the
Yeah.
museums and the
Yeah. The name of
where
God
they
is
where they
I
lock
am.
things up. Sorry?
The name of God, Ehiyeh Asher Ehiyeh. I am that I am, or I will be that which I will be.
Yeah.
Now, here, now, in
Present.
us.
Yeah. In this now moment and never really anywhere else but in mind, but to as a concept, but to bring it out of the conceptual realm, you must experience it here.
Yeah. And that's why we need ritual because that is the experience.
Yeah,
Peter,
yeah.
thank you. This has been a marvelous conversation.
Wonderful, Maggie. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Good thing we don't live closer to each other.
We'd never get anything done at all.
It would. You'd eat some jolly good food, though. Thank
Uh-huh.
you very much, everybody, for watching, listening. We really appreciate you. Do let us know what you think of the putative name of this recording, Two Mystics Walk into a Bar. We're putting it out there, and we'll see whether it works. We're both mystics. Neither of us walks into bars very often, but we can make an
No, get
exception
my
for each other,
glass of
couldn't we?
water here. Yeah.
God bless Peter. God bless everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.